My name is Nora Calder, and I'm 44 years old. I own Calder Plumbing and Piping, 4 techs, 1 dispatcher, and a work truck that smells like PVC, cement, and coffee. My life is simple in the most expensive way. Every check clears because every job is finished, every valve tightened, every promise kept. I met Ethan Brooks 3 years ago in the copper aisle at Pacific Hardware. He was staring at compression fittings like they were a foreign language. I asked what he was trying to do. Fix a leak, he said, hopeful and wrong in the way men get when a YouTube tutorial lies to them. I talked him down from a disaster with words like feral and flare, and he asked if I'd have coffee with him as a thank you. I should have invoiced him. Instead, I said yes. He was 38, a senior sales rep at a tech company downtown. Smart, funny, always in shirts that didn't deserve the shoulders inside them. He liked how I came home speckled with drywall dust and still smelled like lemon cleaner. I liked how he listened when I talked about building something that didn't vanish when a market pivoted. We moved fast. 6 months in, he moved into my house. A year later, we picked a ring at a local jeweler. It wasn't flashy. It was ours. The first time I heard her name was a Tuesday. He came home buzzing about the new sales director, Tanya Reed, a legend from the coast, 20 years in the big leagues. She's going to transform the department, he said, eyes bright. I rinsed grout from my knuckles and said, transform is a dangerous word. He laughed. You're going to love her. She's about performance, no fluff. He said performance the way some people say salvation. Then the joke started. Work wife. It arrived in a sentence too casual to be harmless. Everyone says Tanya's my work wife, he said, smirking. We just click. The phrase tucked itself behind my ribs and waited. I know how quickly a drip becomes a flood. You think a drop can't hurt you. You think that until the ceiling caves. The texts began trickling in after that. Buzzes during dinner, interruptions during movies. Tanya needs input on tomorrow's pitch. Tanya wants to run a pricing structure by me. I asked, can it wait until Monday? He said, sales doesn't stop at 5, Nor. I said nothing while my pasta cooled. Boundaries don't announce themselves. They erode. 3 months after Tanya arrived, Ethan asked if we could invite her over. She's going through a divorce, he said, spoon tapping his bowl. Doesn't know many people here. Be kind. I agreed, because kindness is cheap until it costs you your living room. She arrived in a leased European sedan that still smelled like dealership. She brought wine, so expensive it felt like a dare, and smiled the way people smile when they already own the room. This house is so authentic, she said, looking around at my mismatched chairs and the shelves I hung myself. And your cooking? Refreshingly unpretentious. Every compliment landed with a feather and left a bruise. Ethan glowed beneath her stories. Deals closed, departments restructured, CEOs who called her by first name. She called me hands-on, like a specialty at a spa. When she learned I owned the house outright, paid it off slow and stubborn after my divorce, her eyes flicked, quick as a camera, taking a detail shot. Smart, she said. Liquid risk is a choice. I smiled like I'd been thanked. He started calling me Nor more often. Tanya called me that too, by the end of the night, like she'd been granted a shortcut to familiarity. They camped at my kitchen table over my mother's old cutting board, laptops open, Ethan's shoulders tense with striving. We're just hammering out a deck, he said when I got back from a late service call and found them laughing at something on Tanya's phone, a video of a rooftop bar in a city I couldn't afford to visit. Don't mind us. Don't you have an office? I asked. I meant at your building, with your badge and your cold brew on tap and your theory about productivity. We're being productive, Ethan said. Why does it matter where? Because this is our home, I said, not a co-working space that forgot to charge a membership fee. Tanya raised her brows, sympathy carved to look like respect. Totally understand the need for separation, she said. Boundaries are so important, but in sales, sprints happen after hours. After they left, Ethan told me I'd been weird. His word, not mine. You sounded threatened. I'm not threatened, I said. I'm tired of tripping over your PowerPoints to get to my own dinner. He sighed like I'd missed a lesson. You don't get professional relationships. I swallowed the laugh. I build relationships that keep people's basements from filling with sewage. I get professional just fine. The weeks that followed felt like a slow leak. Tanya's name found its way into everything. Ethan suggested I start thinking bigger about my business. You could scale, he said. Get out of the crawl spaces. Maybe do night classes, an MBA even. Tanya says you've got potential if you'd stop playing small. It's a strange thing, being told you're capable by someone who thinks your life is an underperforming asset. I don't need Tanya's permission to grow, I said. He shook his head. That attitude is exactly why you'll always be small time. There it was, the pity, dressed up like coaching, the rank odor beneath refreshingly unpretentious. Our anniversary arrived with a reservation at his favorite place. I ironed a dress I hadn't worn since a cousin's wedding and waited by the door with my keys, and a smile I hoped would feel like the beginning again. At 6, a text. Rain check. Emergency client issue. Tanya and I need to finalize a proposal. I sat down. Standing felt like begging. I drove to his office anyway. Habit. When there's a blockage, you find the blockage. The conference room lights were on. Takeout containers. No spreadsheets. Ethan and Tanya were bent over his phone, laughing at a video. Sunlight off her ringless finger, the kind of ring absence that reads as invitation. He looked up and froze. Noor, what are you doing here? It's our anniversary, I said. The way his face went blank told me everything I hadn't wanted to know. Oh, God, he said, already reaching for apology. This deal got complicated. It's fine, I said, though it wasn't. The word hung between us like steam from a broken valve, hot, dangerous, invisible. Tanya stood, palms out. My fault, she said, easy as air. You two go. We can pick this up tomorrow. Ethan shook his head. We have to get this out tonight. I looked at the empty cartons, at the phone still open to a rooftop bar. Right, I said. The client. I drove home slowly, like the city was new and poorly mapped. He came in after midnight with a mouthful of reasons. I pretended to sleep because pretending was the only thing we did well together anymore. The next morning, he put his ring in the dish by the sink. Typing, he said. It gets in the way. I made coffee in silence and waited for the drip to turn into a flood. I didn't have to wait long. The morning after the ring landed in the dish like spare change, Ethan set up a war room on my kitchen table. Laptop, second monitor, a forest of sticky notes that said things like align, own narrative, and capture Henderson. He moved the fruit bowl to the floor like it had been cluttering his destiny. Tanya's swinging by, he said. We're sprinting to lock the quarter. In my kitchen. He glanced around, measuring square footage like margins. You've got good light. Light is not the same as permission. She breezed in with that cologne of victory and litigation, wearing a blazer that cost more than my shop vac. Nor, she sang, already shortening me, already claiming the shortcut. We'll be mice, she promised, settling in like a queen. Her laptop unclamped with a sound that made my teeth hurt. Ethan started work speak, words snapping together like Lego. Pipeline, funnel, narrative, runway. I ran through invoices and calls at the end of the counter the way I always do. Quiet, competent, invisible if you weren't looking. They weren't looking. Tanya cooed at the cabinet pulls I'd installed myself. You have an eye, she said, meaning, you belong to small spaces. Then she reopened a spreadsheet and said, we need a model for projected deposits. Keep it outside corporate just while we incubate. Outside corporate, he repeated, writing it down like scripture. They were still there at 10. And the next night. And the weekend. My table became a beeping dashboard, a humming hive. My sink learned the weight of their takeout containers. My chairs learned the sound of their laughter. I tried lines that wouldn't start a war. How long do you think you'll need the table? We're close, Ethan said. You can't imagine how these sprints change the game. Try me, I said, but he'd already turned back to Tanya, who had already turned back to the future they were printing in cells. The calls stretched later. Tanya's name lit his phone like a fire alarm. My shows played to an audience of 1. A text pinged at 10:41. Need your eyes, pricing. Another at 11:09. Board hates the middle tier. Talk? He took them in the hallway like we were children sleeping. I could hear every word. In the morning, I found his gym bag by the door. The gym? I asked. Network lifts, he said, straight-faced. Tanya swears by them. 30 minutes iron, 30 minutes ideas. Does she train all her reps personally? It's called mentorship. It's called proximity, I said. He kissed the air near my cheek. You hear yourself lately? You sound threatened. I went to work early just to be around pipes that told the truth. The competence digs arrived like pamphlets slipped under a door. He suggested I rebrand my company, something sleeker, something not named after me. He sent a link to an online MBA program with a discount code Tanya had hooked up. He bought me a book called Scale or Fail and left it on my pillow like a gift. You think I'm failing? He shook his head. I think you're sitting in comfort. Tanya says comfort is antithetical to growth. Tanya says a lot of things. That tone, he warned, as if tone could rot a foundation faster than contempt. On our anniversary, the one he had converted into a rooftop bar video in a glass-walled room, I ate the rejection like a cold meal. The next day's apology was a bouquet that smelled like a florist's mortgage payment. We'll do it this weekend, he promised. Tanya texted during brunch to say the client's calendar had opened. He stood up with his napkin in his fist. I'm not doing this, I said. Doing what? Sharing. He blinked like the word had never occurred to him. You don't share tools? Men, nor. We share leverage. Buy your own, I said. I did. That night, I found a tab open on his laptop. Quick, there and gone as he flipped windows. Projected deposits. Names that sounded like tech funds. A note. Move to joint. Tax. He shut the lid before I could read the numbers. You're snooping now? I'm cleaning, I said, and swept a crumb into the bin with one finger. I am nothing if not patient with mess, but this one was designing itself. When I suggested counseling, he laughed like I'd offered him a nap. I don't have time for that, we're building. We've built, I said, looking around at the little house that had carried me through a divorce, recession bids, broken ankles on icy steps. This is the part where we maintain. Maintenance is fear, he said. Tanya's theology, word for word. You're sabotaging. I let him have the word. Sabotage. It sounded like dirty hands around a clean neck. It sounded like they'd finally seen me. The overnight trips began 8 months after Tanya started. Conferences that require both of us, he said, as if success were a pair of handcuffs. Always separate rooms, he promised, with the brittle smile of a man who knows he's lying to himself first. He came back smelling like hotel soap and saffron, a spice you can't justify on an expense report. He brought me little gifts from airport kiosks that apologized for nothing. A mug that said Girl Boss, a sleep mask that said Do Not Disturb. He started wearing new clothes, slimmer, louder, shirts with collars designed to be photographed. He took off the ring most days for typing, but I saw the shadow it left on his finger, pale as surrender. He stood in the mirror practicing remarks that weren't meant for me. We're a power couple, he tried out, checking the fit. Our synergy is the product. One night he came home wired, eyes like polished glass. Tanya says we should launch a boutique consultancy. She's connected. I'm operational. We do senior sales overhauls, take a cut of the lift. It's the perfect storm. Who funds the rain? What? The startup runway, I said. Your seed money. We'd each contribute, he said, casual as tapping a card at a register. Not much, and my parents might loan for the right plan. What about the company that already pays you? This is bigger, he said, and his voice softened like he was describing a newborn. I remembered her at my table, measuring my house with her eyes. Liquid risk is a choice. She had mapped us the way you map a new city, where the money slept, where the leverage lived, where the exits were. I started teaching myself to look away, not because I didn't see, because I would not be drafted into their hustle as the opposing team. I took extra calls on weekends, let my techs pick up overtime if they wanted it, and showed up on jobs with a thermos and 2 spare pairs of gloves. My dispatcher, Mel, watched me like you watch a friend pour coffee into a cracked mug. We're okay? She asked. We're okay, I said. Then I added a new line item to the budget. Future contractor, because one day my hands would say no, even if my pride didn't. He forgot his ring again, this time for 2 days, and blamed a hotel nightstand. I found it under a stack of Tanya's printouts, headline fonts about vision, bullet points about expansion, a footer with a logo I didn't recognize. The binder clip left a groove in the paper like teeth. That evening, he came in from the gym with her, both glowing with the kind of sweat that sells memberships. I was kneeling under the sink, extracting a screw that had rusted itself into stubbornness. I heard them pause in the doorway, saw their reflected faces in the cabinet's steel toe. See, Tanya said softly like a docent. Hands on. Ethan said nothing, and the nothing said too much. I slid the screw free with a soft sound that felt like victory and stood, wiping my hands on a rag I'd retired from shirts and given to labor. "Hey," I said, "tools go back where you found them." "What tool?" he asked, and I looked at my table and the plate where my fruit bowl should be, and the second monitor he'd installed without asking. "Me," I said. "Light. Not a fight. Not yet." That night I didn't sleep. In the blue hour before morning, when the house creaks like it's answering questions, I got up and made a list on the back of a receipt. What stays? It had simple entries at first. My house deed, my company, my back, my name. Then it grew teeth. My time, my table, my refusal. When he woke, I handed him coffee and the line he would call an ultimatum because men like him need drama to believe you're serious. "I'm done living in a conference room," I said. "You keep us out of our home, professionally, physically, financially, or you go build whatever you're building somewhere else." "That's not fair," he said, shocked, like I'd moved the exits when he wasn't looking. "You're asking me to choose between my career and—" "I'm asking you to choose between boundaries and a bonfire." He opened his mouth to recite a Tanya verse, then closed it, watching me the way you watch a pipe that started to sing, soft at first, the sound before failure. "We'll talk tonight," he said, choosing the meeting, choosing the stall. That night, of course, he texted, "Late, deck, don't wait up." The next morning, his favorite chef knife was gone from the block. Then a hoodie. Then the framed photo from the beach, the one where the wind got my bangs and we laughed instead of fixing it for the camera. Slow theft. Kind theft. The kind you can deny even as it empties the room. On Saturday, Tanya idled outside in a leased BMW, the color of weather apps. Ethan loaded a suitcase and a box. He stood in my doorway holding a speech. "I need a partner at my level." He stood in my doorway forgetting the line's author. I let him perform it anyway. "You want growth," I said. "Go grow." He meant to slam the door. He closed it gently instead, as if the house might shatter. I set the fruit bowl back where it belonged and put my ledger on the table. The wood was warm under my palms, steady. I wrote the week's numbers, and then, beneath them, 3 words that were not a prayer so much as a diagram. What stays? Me. The silence after Ethan left was not empty. It was loud in a new way. The fridge hummed like it was taking sides. The air vents whispered every time I walked past them. And my own house felt bigger, like it had been waiting for me to notice its square footage again. For the first week, I waited for the apology. Not the grand one, just the text that says, "I overreacted." That's how he'd handled smaller cracks before, with denial and delay. But this time, nothing. Instead, Tanya filled the space where he used to live. Not physically, but through reflections. Her name underlined in his emails, her posts echoing from the glass rectangle of my phone. Every time I scrolled, there they were. Ethan and Tanya Consulting Group. Ambition with integrity. A logo that looked like a wedding monogram. It had taken them exactly 2 weeks to turn Betrayal into branding. I started sleeping on the other side of the bed, the one he used to call the left lane. It felt colder, and I told myself that was good. Cold meant clean. Cold meant boundaries. During the day, I worked until my hands cramped. I replaced water heaters, repaired burst lines, crawled under houses until my shoulders burned. When clients asked, "How's your fiancé?" I said, "He's busy reinventing business." By week 3, his toothbrush was gone. His gym bag, too. The mug he'd left behind, rise, grind, dominate, became a pencil holder in my office. Then, one night around 10, I heard tires crunching in the driveway. Headlights brushed the curtains. I opened the door before he knocked. Ethan stood there, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled, face lined in exhaustion that looked suspiciously like guilt. Behind him, Tanya's silver BMW idled, engine running, headlights washing across my flower beds. He didn't step inside. Maybe he didn't dare. "I need to pick up the rest of my things," he said. His voice was calm, too calm, the way people sound when they've already written their version of events. "Sure," I said. "I labeled the boxes. Makes it easier for your assistant." He flinched. "Nora!" "Save it," I said. "She's waiting." He looked back at the car. Tanya was on her phone, perfectly framed by the dashboard light. She could have been checking stock prices or sending him instructions. Maybe both. "I didn't want it to end this way," he said. "You didn't want it to end here," I corrected. "There's a difference." He stepped inside just far enough to grab the box by the door. "You think I'm choosing her over you, but this is bigger than that." Of course it is, I said. It's visionary, disruptive, scalable. Don't mock what you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're building an empire with someone who calls my kitchen authentic and my work niche. You found a mirror that reflects you taller. He set the box down, hard enough for the tape to sigh. You're so rigid, Nora. You don't bend. You don't evolve. You'd rather stay small than risk failing big. You're mistaking stability for fear, I said. One keeps houses upright. The other builds them on sand. He shook his head. Tanya gets it. She sees my potential. She wants growth. And I wanted loyalty. Loyalty is easy when you have no ambition. There it was, the sentence that finished us. I stood by the counter, hand on the cool tile. Then you'd better go chase it, but take all of it with you. I don't want ambition dripping on my floors. He opened his mouth to argue, but Tanya honked the horn. Twice, sharp and impatient. He looked at me, then at the door. You're making a mistake, he said. So are you, I replied, but yours comes with better lighting. He left without another word. I stood there long after the taillights disappeared, listening to the house breathe, the kind of slow, even breathing that comes after surgery, not after sleep. The weeks that followed were quieter. I expected grief to come in waves, but it came in spreadsheets, payments, quotes, repairs. There's comfort in systems that don't lie. One night, while updating invoices, I noticed something strange. The name Henderson Contracting appeared on one of my leads. It was a commercial property, a complex Tanya's firm had tried to court before she left corporate. I smiled. The world has a sense of humor when it's paying attention. I sent the bid and got the job. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Earned, not pitched. Ethan's name popped up once more, about a month later, in a local business article. Power couple launches startup aimed at modernizing B2B sales. Photo, him in a navy suit, her in white, hand on his shoulder like a claim. Caption, they're redefining ambition. I closed the tab. Redefine all you want, I thought. Just remember the cost of rebranding a soul. Then came the text. Ethan. Hope you're doing okay. Just wanted to check in. Me. Define okay. Ethan. Miss our talks. Me. You mean the ones where you quoted Tanya? Ethan. You're still bitter. Me. I'm busy. He stopped texting after that. I heard through Sean that he and Tanya had moved in together. 2-bedroom downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows, view of the skyline. Power couple, the neighbors called them. The kind that had matching key cards and joint calendars. 6 months later, I found my rhythm again. Business steady, nights quiet, mornings filled with coffee and silence that didn't hurt anymore. I thought the story was over, until the call came. A number I hadn't saved but recognized by heart. Ethan. 3 months of silence, and now his voice was shaking. Nora, it's Tanya. She's gone. I almost asked, gone where? But something in his tone made the question feel redundant. She took everything, he said. The business money, my savings, the loans, everything. $40,000. I leaned against the counter and stared at the spot on the table where Tanya used to sit, talking about synergy and disruption. I told you light wasn't permission, I said quietly. What? Nothing, go on. He started explaining. Office cleared out, accounts empty, her number disconnected, LinkedIn deleted. It was almost poetic, the way ambition writes its own obituary. He begged to meet. Please, I just need 20 minutes. Part of me wanted to hang up. The other part, the part that likes a clean ending, said yes. I told him I'd meet him at the cafe on 4th and Maple, neutral ground. He agreed instantly. That's when I knew he was desperate, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't. When I pulled into the cafe parking lot that morning, it felt like déjà vu. Same table by the window where we'd once planned vacations and argued over floor tiles. But this time, he was already there, hands clasped around a paper cup like it was keeping him alive. Ethan looked smaller, not thinner, just collapsed somehow. His shirt still crisp, but the posture gone, his hair unstyled, his eyes, those once bright, pitch-me eyes, were rimmed red. Nora, he said when he saw me. Relief, disbelief, guilt, all in one syllable. I sat across from him, folded my hands. You said 20 minutes. He nodded quickly. Right, yeah. He tried for a smile. It didn't survive the attempt. Tanya's gone. You mentioned that. He swallowed hard. She took everything. Define everything. 40,000. My savings. the business funds, even the loan my parents gave me to cover the startup costs. She cleaned the joint account, wiped it. I leaned back, watching him unravel the story like a cable that never ends. He told me how she'd suggested merging finances for transparency, how she'd handled client payments for efficiency, how he'd signed forms he never read, how Monday morning, their office was an empty suite with dust rings where monitors had stood. Even the Wi-Fi's gone, he said. She canceled it. The landlord said she gave notice 3 weeks ago. I didn't even know. That's impressive planning, I said. You always admired her organization. He winced. Please don't. Don't what? Be the villain in your redemption arc? This isn't funny, Nora. She scammed me. She scammed herself first. You were just the down payment. He pressed his hands against his face, voice cracking. I thought I was different. She said we were partners. You were, I said, until it stopped being profitable. He looked up, and for a moment I saw the man I'd once trusted, the one who'd fixed a faucet wrong just so I'd come help, who'd traced pipe routes on my blueprints with fascination instead of contempt. I lost everything, he whispered. My savings, my job. Even my parents are furious. My company suspended me while they audit the accounts. They think I was in on it. Were you? I asked softly. No, God, no. She said the funds were temporary transfers, tax optimization, all jargon I didn't understand but wanted to believe. Of course you wanted to believe. That's what ambition does. It speaks fluent illusion. He nodded miserably. I should have listened to you. That would have required hearing me. He stared at me like he was trying to calculate a way back. Then came the part I was waiting for. I miss you, Nora. There it is, I said. I made a mistake. I see that now. Everything you said about her, about me, was right. I was blinded. By ambition or admiration? Both, he admitted. She made me feel like I could be someone important. You already were. You just didn't like the version of importance that came with dirt under your nails. He reached for my hand. I didn't move. Please, he said. Let me come home. I'll fix things. We'll rebuild. Rebuild what, Ethan? The life you walked away from, or the image you broke trying to impress her? I can't do this alone. You could have once. You just chose not to. He exhaled, defeated. You won't even consider it? I considered it, I said, for about 10 seconds. Then I remembered the look on your face when you told me I was small time. He flinched like I'd thrown something. I was wrong. Maybe, but wrong has a price. We sat there for a long moment, the sound of espresso machines filling the gaps. Outside, people moved with purpose. Jobs, errands, lunches. The world didn't stop for either of us. I forgive you, I said finally. He blinked. You what? I forgive you, I repeated. But that's not an invitation. It's a conclusion. He looked lost, as if the map he'd used to justify everything had just turned blank. Where am I supposed to go? He asked quietly. Same place I did when you left, I said. Forward. I stood, gathered my bag, and left him sitting there with his untouched coffee cooling between his palms. That night, I sat on my porch with a beer and the quiet hum of the neighborhood. Mel had texted earlier. Our commercial client just approved a year-long maintenance contract. I was officially booked solid through next summer. For a long time, I just stared at the moonlight on my driveway, the same one Ethan's car used to pull into at midnight. I thought about the way Tanya had studied this house like it was an opportunity, about Ethan calling it a stepping stone. And then I laughed, not the bitter kind, the kind that sneaks up when you realize the universe has better comedic timing than you ever will. Because the company Tanya mocked as too local, the one she said had no scalability, they'd just hired me as their preferred plumbing contractor for all 6 of their new properties. By the end of the year, my earnings would pass what Ethan and Tanya lost combined. Small time, I thought. My kind of scale. The next morning, a message came through from an unknown number. Tanya Reed. You don't know me, but I think you deserve a thank you. Ethan was a liability. I just collected what he offered. He's lucky it wasn't worse. I stared at it for a long time before deleting it. No response necessary. Let her think she'd won. Let her think she'd gotten away. I'd already learned that the best revenge isn't justice or karma. It's peace. I didn't hear from Ethan for 3 weeks after the cafe. Not a text, not a call, not even a stray, how are you? It should have been closure. But closure, I've learned, isn't something that arrives like a package. It's something you build piece by piece, the same way you build a house, with tools, bruised hands, and the decision not to leave when the work gets messy. Then, one Thursday, he called again. Nora, please, just hear me out. I was under a client's sink when his name lit the screen. My instinct said, ignore. My habit said, finish the job. But I answered. You have 60 seconds, I said. He sighed. I need to see you one last time. We already did that. I wasn't in the right headspace. I didn't. You never were. He went quiet, then softer. I'm losing everything. My parents won't talk to me. My lawyer says I'll probably be liable for half the debt, and I can't even afford rent. I'm staying on my sister's couch. I tightened the wrench under the sink until the leak stopped hissing. Sounds familiar, I said. I made mistakes. You made investments in people who told you what you wanted to hear. That's not a mistake, Ethan. That's vanity. Can't you have a little compassion? I do. That's why I'm still on the phone. He asked to stop by the house. Against my better judgment, I agreed, mostly because I didn't like unfinished work, and this felt like a loose pipe rattling behind drywall. When he arrived, the first thing he did was look around like he expected something to have changed. You painted, he said. Yep, it looks good. It looks like mine, I corrected. He nodded, eyes glassy. You really are doing fine. Better than fine. I am busy. Booked through next year. The house is solid. Business is steady. He tried to smile. That's great, Nora. Really, I'm proud of you. Don't be. Pride doesn't belong to spectators. He winced, but didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A ring box. The one I thought I'd never see again. He opened it. The diamond caught the kitchen light like it remembered the house. I kept it, he said, because some part of me thought maybe... Maybe what? That you'd still want what we had. I looked at it. The ring hadn't changed, but the woman who wore it had. Ethan, you don't want me. You want what I represent. Stability, forgiveness, a clean history for your next pitch. That's not true. Isn't it? I asked. You called me small time because I wasn't chasing the illusion fast enough. Tanya promised you altitude. I offered ground. You chose sky. And I fell. Exactly. And now you want the ground to catch you again. He swallowed hard. So, that's it? You won't take me back? I smiled, gentle this time. Ethan, you left a woman who owned her home, ran her own business, and loved you without conditions, for someone who rented everything, including her confidence. You traded permanence for potential. Why would I trade back? He opened his mouth, closed it, then whispered, I don't know where to go. You'll figure it out, I said. That's what people do when there's no one left to rescue them. He stood there a moment longer, ring still open, like maybe it could hypnotize time. Then he snapped the box shut and nodded. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I did love you. I know, I said, but you loved the version of me that didn't make you question yourself. That's not love, that's comfort. After he left, I sat on the porch again. Same spot, same chair. The air smelled like rain on concrete. Clean, temporary, real. My phone buzzed, a message from Mel. Client confirmed the expansion contract. Congrats, boss. Drinks on me? I texted back a single word. Deal. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something simple. Not triumph, not vindication, just peace. Later that night, I scrolled through my old messages with Ethan, the ones I'd never deleted. Somewhere near the beginning, he'd once written, You make everything feel solid, Nor. He meant it as a compliment back then. Now I read it as a prophecy. Because solid isn't small. Solid is steady. Solid is surviving storms that people like Tanya call growth opportunities. Solid doesn't collapse when someone like Ethan goes chasing elevation without a parachute. I closed the messages, powered down my phone, and looked around my house. Quiet, owned, whole. Small time? Maybe. But small time doesn't disappear with a bank transfer. Small time doesn't wake up wondering whose promises paid the rent. Small time keeps its lights on, its bills paid, and its soul intact. I poured a glass of wine, set it beside my ledger, and wrote 3 words on the top line for next week's plan. What stays? Me. Then I underlined it twice.